The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gardens of the Al Fayez estate as Layla Montgomery adjusted her camera lens, attempting to capture the perfect angle of the exotic flowers that flourished despite the desert climate. At 42, she still maintained the lithe figure of her youth, though fine lines had begun to frame her expressive green eyes that had seen too much sorrows in recent years. Her chestnut hair, swept into a practical ponytail, caught the golden light as she worked, oblivious to the approaching footsteps on the marble pathway. "You favor the desert rose," came a deep voice from behind her. "Interesting choice. Most visitors are drawn to the imported orchids." Layla startled, nearly dropping her expensive camera as she turned to face the owner of the voice. She hadn't expected to encounter anyone in this secluded section of the botanical gardens, especially not Sheikh Karim Al Fayez himself. The man stood before her, tall and imposing in his crisp white thobe, his dark eyes studying her with undisguised curiosity. "The desert rose survives against impossible odds," she replied, finding her voice despite her surprise. "It creates beauty in harshness. That's worth documenting." His expression shifted, the formal mask of polite interest giving way to something more genuine. Appreciation, perhaps. "You speak like someone who understands survival." "I've had some practice," Layla acknowledged, extending her hand in a gesture that felt both professional and oddly intimate. "Layla Montgomery, I'm photographing for the cultural exchange exhibition." Sheikh Karim's hand enveloped hers, warm and firm. "Welcome to Al Nasira, Mrs. Montgomery. Though I believe the exhibition photographers weren't scheduled for private garden access until tomorrow." A flush of embarrassment colored her cheeks. "It's Miss, actually, and I apologize for the intrusion. The groundskeeper mentioned this area, and no apology necessary," he interrupted, releasing her hand, but somehow maintaining the connection with his steady gaze. "The best art often comes from unexpected paths. And please, call me Karim. At least while you're trespassing in my personal gardens." The hint of humor in his voice disarmed her, and Layla found herself smiling genuinely for what felt like the first time in years. "Then I'll have to trespass more often, Karim." Neither could have known in that moment how prophetic her words would prove to be. 3 weeks into her stay in Al Nasira, Layla had established a comfortable routine. Mornings were devoted to the official photography assignments. The new university campus, funded by the Al Fayez Foundation, the Women's Entrepreneurship Center, the restored historical district. But the afternoons, those belonged to her personal project, a series capturing the contrast between ancient traditions and rapid modernization in this corner of the Arabian Peninsula. She hadn't expected to see Sheikh Karim again after their garden encounter, assuming he was too occupied with matters of business and state to remember a visiting photographer. So when his sleek black Mercedes pulled alongside her as she walked back to her hotel one evening, Layla was certain it must be a coincidence. "Ms. Montgomery," he called through the lowered window. "You're a long way from the exhibition hall." Layla shielded her eyes against the setting sun. "I was photographing the old market. The light at dusk brings out the textures of the spices." He nodded, as if this made perfect sense to him. "And now you're walking 3 kilometers back to your hotel in this heat." "I enjoy walking," she said, though the perspiration beading along her hairline betrayed her discomfort in the lingering desert heat. "As do I, but even I know when to surrender to modern convenience." He reached across and opened the passenger door. "Please, allow me to drive you." Every instinct told her to politely decline. She was in a foreign country, and despite his position and reputation, Sheikh Karim was essentially a stranger. Yet something in his expression, earnest without presumption, made her reconsider. "Thank you," she said, sliding into the cool leather interior. "Though I should warn you, I'm not dressed for diplomatic company." Karim looked amused as he pulled away from the curb. "And what does diplomatic company dress like, in your experience?" "Well, not covered in dust and smelling of cumin and cardamom from the spice market," she replied, suddenly self-conscious about her simple linen pants and wrinkled blouse. "Then diplomatic company has been missing out," he said, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "Those who fear a little dust rarely discover anything worthwhile." The car glided through the streets, and Layla noticed they were heading away from her hotel. "Have I been kidnapped by royalty?" she asked, only half joking. "Hardly royalty. My family's wealth comes from less illustrious sources than royal blood. Oil. Initially, though we've diversified considerably." He glanced her way. "And not kidnapped. Merely redirected. I thought you might appreciate seeing the coast at sunset. Unless you have other commitments, she should say yes. That she had work to review, emails to answer, calls to make. But the truth was, her evenings in Al Nasira had been solitary affairs, and the prospect of watching the sunset over the Arabian Gulf with this intriguing man was far more appealing than another night alone with room service. "No commitments," she admitted. "Lead on, Sheikh." "Karim," he reminded her gently. The coastal road wound along cliffs that dropped dramatically to the turquoise waters below. Finally, Karim pulled into a small lookout point, where a single bench faced the horizon. No other cars were parked there. Whether by chance or design, Layla couldn't tell. They sat in companionable silence as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks that reflected off the water's surface. "I've lived here my entire life," Karim said quietly. "And this view still takes my breath away." Layla nodded, understanding completely. Some beauty never becomes ordinary, no matter how often you witness it. "Yes," he agreed, though when she turned, she found him looking not at the sunset, but at her. The intensity in his dark eyes made her heart flutter in a way it hadn't for years. Not since before David's illness had consumed their lives. "Tell me about your photography," he said, mercifully breaking the moment before it became overwhelming. "Why this project? Why Al Nasira?" Layla took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I specialize in cultural transition, communities at crossroads. After my husband died, I needed purpose, something to remind me that change can be beautiful, not just devastating." "I'm sorry for your loss," Karim said, his voice gentle but not pitying. 3 years ago, she acknowledged. "Cancer. It was a long goodbye. Those can be the most difficult," he observed. "My father's death was sudden. A heart attack during a business meeting. Sometimes I think he preferred it that way. No time for regrets or unsaid words. And your mother, still very much alive and very much a force of nature," he said with obvious affection. "She lives in our family compound, but maintains her independence fiercely. You remind me of her somewhat." Layla raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure how to take being compared to your mother." Karim laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to surprise even him. "As the highest compliment, I assure you. She's the most resilient person I know. After father died, many expected her to retreat into traditional widowhood. Instead, she established 3 charitable foundations and learned to pilot small aircraft. She sounds remarkable. She would like you," he said with certainty. "Perhaps you'll meet her before you leave Al Nasira." The statement hung between them, laden with possibilities neither was ready to acknowledge. The sun had disappeared below the horizon now, leaving only a fading amber glow. "I should get you back," Karim said eventually. though he made no move to stand. Yes, Layla agreed, equally motionless. When he finally drove her to her hotel, Karim walked her to the entrance, a gesture both old-fashioned and oddly touching. "Thank you for the sunset," she said, standing awkwardly at the gilded doors. "Thank you for your company," he replied. Then, with formal politeness that somehow felt more intimate than a kiss would have been. "Good night, Layla Montgomery." She watched his car disappear into the night traffic, her heart racing with emotions she had thought long buried with her husband. Part of her wanted to run after him, while another part wanted to pack her bags and flee back to the safety of her solitary life in Boston. Instead, she did neither, returning to her room where she spent hours reviewing the day's photographs, deliberately avoiding examining too closely the feelings that had begun to take root. Karim hadn't planned on becoming involved with the American photographer. In fact, he had deliberately avoided personal entanglements since his divorce 5 years earlier. At 47, he had resigned himself to a life focused on business and philanthropy, raising his teenage daughter Samira as a single father and eventually fulfilling his family's expectation that he would make a sensible second marriage to someone from within their social circle. Yet he found himself thinking about Layla's intelligent eyes and straightforward manner at the most inopportune moments, during board meetings, diplomatic functions, even while reviewing his daughter's school progress with her teachers. "You seem distracted, father," Samira observed over breakfast in their private quarters, a week after his sunset drive with Layla. At 16, his daughter missed nothing, combining her late mother's perceptiveness with his own direct approach. "Business matters," he said, not meeting her scrutinizing gaze. "Business matters don't usually make you smile at your eggs," she countered, setting down her fork. "Is it about the American photographer, the one documenting the cultural initiative?" Karim nearly choked on his coffee. "What makes you ask about her specifically?" Samira's expression was altogether too knowing for Karim's comfort. "Uncle Faisal mentioned you've requested background information on her, and you've rearranged your schedule twice to attend exhibition planning meetings you would normally delegate. Your uncle should learn discretion," Karim muttered, though without heat. His younger brother had always been his closest confidant. "Is she nice?" Samira asked, her voice softening. "It's been a long time since you've shown interest in anyone." The directness of the question caught him off guard. In their household, they had always spoken openly, even after her mother left them to pursue a life less constrained by tradition and responsibility. Still, discussing his personal life with his teenage daughter felt strange. "She is unexpected," he finally answered. "Intelligent, focused on her work, not interested in wealth or status. You like her," Samira concluded with satisfaction. "When do I get to meet her?" "Samira, it's not," he began, then stopped himself. What wasn't it exactly? He was attracted to Layla, certainly. But it was more than that. He respected her talent, her resilience, her perspective. "It's complicated. She's here temporarily. Her life is in America." "So, we have planes," his daughter said with the simple logic of youth. "And you're always saying we need to expand our American operations." Despite himself, Karim smiled. "I see your mother's flair for practical solutions has not been lost on you. Will you see her again before she leaves?" The question had been circling in his own mind for days. Protocol and propriety suggested he should maintain distance. The cultural differences, their separate lives, her recent widowhood, all were compelling reasons to let their brief connection fade into a pleasant memory. "Perhaps," he said non-committally, though he had already decided to attend the gallery opening where her work would be featured that weekend. The National Gallery of Al Nasira gleamed with polished marble and state-of-the-art lighting, the perfect showcase for the cultural exchange exhibition. Layla moved through the crowded space, accepting congratulations from officials and art patrons, while keeping an eye on the entrance. She told herself she wasn't waiting for anyone in particular. Even as she acknowledged the disappointment each time the doors opened to reveal someone other than Kareem. Her exhibition space featured 20 large-format photographs. The centerpiece was a triptych, contrasting 3 generations of Al Nasiran women. A grandmother in traditional dress, grinding spices in a stone mortar. Her daughter in business attire, consulting architectural plans. Her granddaughter in a modified hijab and jeans, working on robotics at the new university. Layla had titled it simply, Continuity. "You've captured something essential about our country," came a familiar voice, and Layla turned to find Kareem, standing before her photographs, elegant in a tailored Western suit, rather than his usual traditional attire. "The way we honor the past, while embracing the future. That was my hope," she said, genuinely pleased by his understanding of her intention. "Though as an outsider, I worried about presuming too much. Sometimes an outsider sees most clearly what those of us living within the frame cannot," he replied. "These images tell a story those of us too close might miss." Their eyes met, and Layla felt the same inexplicable connection she had experienced that first day in the garden. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by the exhibition curator. Introducing Kareem to a visiting diplomat, he excused himself, with obvious reluctance, whispering as he left, "Find me before you leave." The evening passed in a blur of conversations and professional networking. Finally, as the crowd began to thin, Layla spotted Kareem in conversation with a striking teenage girl near the exhibition exit. Something in their body language suggested intimacy, and with a sudden clarity, Layla realized she was seeing his daughter. She approached hesitantly, not wanting to intrude on a family moment. "Ms. Montgomery," Kareem said warmly when he spotted her. "I'd like you to meet my daughter, Samira." The girl extended her hand with poised confidence. "I've been admiring your work. The series on the desert reclamation project is particularly impressive." "Thank you," Layla replied, surprised by the girl's composed maturity. "Those images are special to me as well." "My father says you're leaving Al Nasira next week," Samira continued, with a directness that reminded Layla of Kareem. "Yes, unfortunately, my assignment here is nearly complete." "That's too bad," the girl said, exchanging a meaningful look with her father that Layla couldn't quite interpret. "We're hosting a small dinner at our home tomorrow evening. Perhaps you would join us. I'd love to hear more about your photography techniques." Layla hesitated, looking to Karim, who appeared both amused and slightly embarrassed by his daughter's transparent matchmaking. "We would be honored if you would join us," he said formally, though his eyes conveyed a more personal invitation. "Strictly informal, just family and a few close friends." "I'd like that," Layla found herself saying, even as a voice in her head questioned the wisdom of deepening this connection when she would soon be thousands of miles away. After exchanging contact information and confirming details, Samira excused herself to speak with friends, leaving Layla and Kareem momentarily alone. "Your daughter is impressive," Layla said, "and apparently quite invested in your social life." Kareem ran a hand through his dark hair, flecked with distinguished silver at the temples. "I apologize for her enthusiasm. Since her mother left, she's appointed herself guardian of my happiness." "Her mother?" Layla asked, surprised. She had assumed he was a widower. "My ex-wife," he clarified. Nadia and I divorced 5 years ago. She lives in London now with her second husband. I see, Layla said, recalibrating her understanding of his situation. That can't have been easy for either of you. Divorce is never simple, he acknowledged. But sometimes continuing together would be more damaging than parting. Nadia needed a different life than the one I could offer. We've made peace with that reality. The candor of his response touched her. Before she could reply, they were joined by the exhibition director. Ending their moment of privacy as the evening concluded, Karim took her hand briefly. Until tomorrow then. Until tomorrow, she echoed, watching him depart with his daughter, feeling as though she stood at the edge of something both thrilling and terrifying. The Al-Fayez family compound was a masterpiece of contemporary architecture that respected traditional Arabian design principles. As Layla's hired car passed through the security gate, she felt a flutter of nerves. This wasn't simply dinner with a man she found attractive. It was entering his world, meeting his family. A household staff member greeted her at the entry, leading her through a series of elegant spaces to an open-air courtyard where a fountain played musically. Samira spotted her first, waving enthusiastically. As she approached, "You came," the girl said, as if she had harbored doubts. "Come meet my grandmother." Before Layla could prepare herself, she was being presented to an elegant older woman, seated on a cushioned divan. Fatima Al-Fayez radiated the kind of authority that comes from a lifetime of navigating power and privilege, while maintaining one's principles. "So you're the photographer who has captured my son's attention," Fatima said without preamble, gesturing for Layla to sit beside her. "Show me your hands." Bewildered, Layla extended her hands, which Fatima took between her own, studying them carefully. "Good. Strong hands. Workers' hands, despite your education. You've known struggle." She released Layla's hands with an approving nod. "Tell me about your late husband." "Mother," Karim's voice interrupted as he joined them. "Perhaps allow our guest to at least have a drink before the interrogation begins." Fatima waved away his concern. "She doesn't mind, do you, Layla?" A woman who has faced grief understands the value of directness. Strangely, Layla found she didn't mind. There was something refreshing about the older woman's approach. "David was a professor of comparative literature," she said simply. "We were married for 12 years before his illness. He was kind, brilliant, and stubborn to a fault." Fatima nodded as if this confirmed something for her. "And you have no children?" "Mother," Karim said, more sharply this time. "No," Layla answered, maintaining her composure, despite the pang the question always brought. "We wanted them, but it wasn't possible for us." "I see," Fatima said, and Layla had the distinct impression that she truly did see. Not just the facts, but the sorrow behind them. "Well, you are welcome in our home, Layla Montgomery." With that pronouncement, the tension dissolved, and the evening flowed into an unexpectedly relaxed gathering. Dinner was served in a dining room, where one wall was entirely glass, showcasing a view of the illuminated city below. The conversation ranged widely, from politics to art to Samira's studies. Throughout the meal, Layla found herself increasingly drawn to the family dynamics. The obvious affection between Karim and his daughter, the good-natured sparring between him and his mother, the easy inclusion of friends who clearly had a long history with the family. It was a world both utterly foreign to her and strangely familiar in its warmth. After dinner, Karim offered to show her the rest of the property. As they walked through the gardens, now artfully lit by subtle landscape lighting, Layla felt a sense of peaceful contentment she hadn't experienced in years. "Your family is wonderful," she said as they paused beside a small reflecting pool. "Your mother is quite a force of nature, as advertised. She likes you, Karim replied, which she would never admit directly, but I can tell, and that matters. To you? Her approval. He considered this. His profile strong in the gentle illumination, not in the way you might think. I value her insight, not her permission. She sees people clearly. They had reached a secluded alcove with a stone bench. Sitting beside her, Karim seemed to come to a decision. Layla, I know you're leaving in a few days. I know our lives are separate, our world's different, but I find myself unwilling to simply let you go without acknowledging what I believe we both feel. Her heart raced, but Layla forced herself to be practical. Karim, I'm still rebuilding my life after David. You have responsibilities here that I can't begin to understand. Whatever this connection between us, and I do feel it, the timing is impossible. Perhaps, he acknowledged. Or perhaps timing is just another obstacle, like cultural differences or geographic distance. Obstacles can be navigated, Layla, if the destination is worth reaching. What are you suggesting? She asked, barely trusting her voice. Nothing specific yet, he said. Only that we explore possibilities, rather than surrendering to limitations. Would you consider extending your stay in Al-Nasira? The Cultural Foundation could commission an expanded project. The offer was tempting, professionally legitimate, while allowing them time to understand what existed between them. Yet something in Layla resisted. I can't accept special treatment because of personal connections, she said finally. It would compromise my professional integrity. Rather than arguing, Karim nodded with respect. Then what would you suggest? The question caught her off guard. She had expected him to either press his case or retreat into polite acceptance. Instead, he was treating her as a partner in solving their dilemma. I need to return as scheduled, she said slowly, working through her thoughts. I have commitments, but perhaps I could return for a different project, something independent, not commissioned by your foundation. A project documenting the changing skyline of Al-Nasira, Karim suggested, warming to the idea. Thus the contrast between historic districts and modern development. You could approach the tourism board for funding, which is separate from your business interests, Layla added, seeing the path he was creating. Entirely separate, he confirmed. Though I happen to know their director quite well, Layla laughed despite herself. Of course you do. Does that mean you'll consider it? He asked, and behind the composed businessman, she glimpsed genuine vulnerability. I'll consider it, she agreed, her heart lightening at the possibility of a future that included Karim, but no promises. I would never presume to extract promises under moonlight, he said solemnly, though his eyes danced with humor. That would be terribly undiplomatic. The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken potential. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, Karim leaned forward and brushed his lips against hers. A kiss so gentle it was almost not a kiss at all, yet it sent electricity through her body. When he drew back, his expression was a mixture of wonder and uncertainty that mirrored her own feelings. Too soon? He asked quietly. Maybe, she admitted. But I'm glad you did it anyway. They returned to the house hand in hand, neither rushing to define what was developing between them. Content for now, with the simple knowledge that whatever it was, they would face it together. The weeks that followed Layla's return to Boston were filled with long-distance conversations, late-night phone calls that bridged the geographic separation, but emphasized the differences in their daily lives. Karim managed a business empire and navigated the complexities of tribal and international politics. Layla edited her exhibition photographs and pitched new projects to magazines and galleries. Yet despite these differences, they found common ground in their values, their sense of humor, their perspective on life's priorities. When Layla received approval for a 3-month documentary project on Al-Nasirah's architectural evolution, she told herself it was purely professional opportunity that made her heart leap. But the truth, which she admitted only in her most honest moments, was that the prospect of seeing Karim again filled her with both excitement and terror. "You're sure about this?" asked her sister Rachel during their weekly video call. "Moving halfway around the world for a man you barely know." "I'm not moving for him," Layla insisted, though the protest sounded weak, even to her own ears. "The project is legitimate. Important work." Rachel hummed skeptically. "And the fact that your sheikh—" "He's not my sheikh," Layla interrupted. "Just happens to live there is completely coincidental," her sister finished, ignoring the interruption. "Layla, I'm not judging. God knows you deserve happiness after everything with David. I just want you to be careful. Cross-cultural relationships are complicated enough without adding his position into the mix." "I know," Layla sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Believe me, I've thought about all the reasons this is a bad idea. But when I'm with him, Rachel, it feels right. Like I've found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." Her sister's expression softened. "Then go. But promise me you'll keep your Boston apartment, just in case." "Already renewed the lease," Layla confirmed. "I'm optimistic, not reckless." 2 weeks later, she found herself once again in Al-Nasirah, this time installed in a small but elegant apartment provided by the Tourism Authority for visiting artists. Karim had respected her insistence on maintaining professional separation, though he had sent a breathtaking arrangement of desert roses to welcome her back to the country. Their reunion happened at a small cafe in the Old City, neutral territory, where they could reconnect without the pressure of either his family compound or her private space. When she spotted him waiting at an outdoor table, dressed casually in a light linen shirt and pants, rather than his usual formal attire, Layla felt a surge of emotion so powerful, it nearly stopped her in her tracks. "You came back," he said simply, when she joined him, his eyes taking in every detail of her appearance. As if memorizing her, the project was too interesting to refuse. She replied with a small smile, maintaining their pretense that this was primarily professional. "Of course," he agreed solemnly, though his eyes crinkled at the corners with suppressed humor. "The architectural heritage of Al-Nasirah is indeed fascinating." They managed to maintain the charade through coffee, discussing her project plans and the access she would need to various sites. But as they walked afterward, through the winding streets of the old market, their hands brushed accidentally, then deliberately, until their fingers intertwined. "I missed you," Karim admitted quietly, stopping in a shadowed doorway, away from curious eyes. "More than I expected to." "I missed you too," Layla replied, allowing herself the simple honesty of the statement. This time when he kissed her, there was nothing tentative about it. Months of separation and longing crystallized into a moment of connection that left them both breathless. "Come to dinner tomorrow," he said when they finally drew apart. "Samira has been asking about you constantly, and my mother claims she needs your opinion on the new women's education initiative." "Your mother does not need anyone's opinion but her own," Layla laughed. "But yes, I'd love to come." What followed was a delicate dance of integrating their lives while maintaining the boundaries Layla needed. She threw herself into her project, documenting the city's architectural evolution with a passion that was professional, but also deeply personal. This place was becoming part of her, just as its most prominent citizen, was becoming essential to her happiness. Karim respected her independence, never pressuring her to adapt to his world more quickly than she was comfortable. He introduced her gradually to the social obligations that came with his position, allowing her to decide which events she would attend and which she would forgo. In return, Layla made efforts to understand the complexities of his life, the delicate balance he maintained between tradition and progress, the weight of responsibility he carried for his family name and heritage, the challenges of raising a daughter in changing times. Not everyone approved of their relationship. Whispers followed them at social functions. Speculation about the American widow's intentions. Concerns about cultural compatibility. Judgments about the appropriate mourning period. Some of Karim's business associates made thinly veiled suggestions about more suitable matches from prominent local families. "Does it bother you?" Layla asked one night as they sat on the terrace of her apartment, watching lightning flicker over the distant desert. The talk? Karim considered her question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Not for myself. I've lived with public scrutiny my entire life, but I worry about its effect on you. I'm tougher than I look," she assured him. "The only opinion that truly matters to me is yours. And Samira's," she added after a moment. "And your mother's, though I'd never admit that to her face." He laughed, drawing her closer against the cooling evening air. "Wise decision. She's insufferable enough without." Knowing her power, they sat in comfortable silence until Karim spoke again, his voice more serious. "There's something I need to discuss with you. A situation that may affect us." Layla tensed, sensing the weight of his words. "What is it?" "The Almera family has approached mine about a potential marriage alliance," he said carefully. "Their daughter Jamila recently completed her education in London. The families have had business connections for generations." "I see," Layla said, her heart constricting, even as she fought to keep her voice steady. "And what did you tell them?" "That I was honored by their consideration, but not available for such an arrangement." His arm tightened around her. "Layla, look at me." She raised her eyes to his, vulnerable despite her best efforts. "I turned them down without hesitation," he said firmly. "But you should know that such proposals may continue. In our society, marriage is often seen as a matter of family alliance as much as personal choice, especially for someone in my position." "And what do you see it as?" she asked. The question that had been hovering between them for months finally given voice. "For me, now, at this point in my life," he brushed a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. "A matter of the heart, above all else. I've fulfilled my family obligations. I've maintained our business interests. I've raised a daughter who will soon make her own way in the world. What remains is my life to live as I choose." The declaration hung in the air between them, profound in its simplicity. "Karim?" Layla began, then faltered, overwhelmed by emotions she had kept carefully contained since David's death. "I'm afraid." "Of what exactly?" "Of loving again. Of losing again," she whispered. "Of letting myself believe in a future that could disappear in an instant." "All futures are uncertain," he acknowledged, "but some risks are worth taking." As if to emphasize his point, the sky opened in a sudden desert downpour, rare and violent. They scrambled inside, laughing as they shook water from their clothes. Standing in her dimly lit living room, damp and disheveled, Karim looked at her with such naked emotion that Layla felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. "Stay," she said simply. "Tonight, with me." His answer was not in words, but in the reverent way he took her in his arms, as if she was something precious he had searched for all his life. The weeks stretched into months, and Layla's project neared completion. Her relationship with Karim had deepened in ways neither had anticipated, moving beyond initial attraction to profound partnership. Yet the question of their future remained unresolved, becoming more pressing as her official reason for remaining in Al Nasira drew to a close. The issue came to a head during a dinner at the Al Fayyaz compound, when Fatima broached the subject with her characteristic directness. "Your work here is nearly finished. I understand," she said to Layla as they took coffee in the women's sitting room, a tradition Fatima maintained, despite more modern family structures. "What are your plans?" Layla exchanged a glance with Karim, who sat across the room engaged in conversation with his brother Faisal. They had yet to discuss her departure in concrete terms, both avoiding the inevitable decision. "I have several possibilities," Layla answered carefully. "A gallery in New York has expressed interest in my Al Nasira series, and there's a potential book project, all requiring your return to America," Fatima pressed. "Mother," Samira interjected from her place beside Layla. "You're being obvious. And my age, subtlety is a waste of limited time," Fatima replied without apology. "Layla, my son cares deeply for you. This is evident to anyone with eyes. The question is whether you intend to build a life with him or break his heart when you leave." "That's not a fair characterization," Karim interrupted, having approached without them noticing. "Layla and I are both adults capable of managing our relationship without family intervention." The tension in the room thickened as mother and son engaged in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Layla stood, placing a calming hand on Karim's arm. "It's a legitimate question," she said quietly. "One we've avoided too long." Later that night, as they walked through the moonlit gardens, the unspoken future between them could no longer be ignored. "What do you want, Layla?" Karim asked finally. Truly, she considered the question, giving it the honest reflection it deserved. "I want to continue my work. I want to make photographs that matter, and I want you in my life." She paused, gathering courage. "But I don't know if I can be what your position requires. The social obligations, the public scrutiny, the expectations. What if I told you I'm considering stepping back?" he said, surprising her. "Not from the family business entirely, but from the public-facing role. Faisal has been managing more of our international operations. Samira will be attending university in London next year. You'd do that?" she asked, astonished. "Change your entire life." "Not change it, evolve it," he corrected. "I've been the sheikh, the CEO, the public figure for 25 years. Perhaps it's time for a different chapter." The magnitude of what he was suggesting overwhelmed her. "Karim, I would never ask you to alter your life so dramatically for me." You didn't ask," he replied simply. "But life shifts and changes. Meeting you has shown me possibilities I had stopped considering." He took both her hands in his. "I'm not proposing abandoning my responsibilities, only redistributing them to create space for what matters most." Layla struggled to absorb the implications. "This is a lot to process." "Of course," he agreed immediately. "I don't expect an answer tonight. Only consider that our lives need not be either or. Perhaps we can create something that honors both our needs." They walked in thoughtful silence back toward the house, the question of their future still unresolved, but now acknowledged between them. The following week brought unexpected complications. A British tabloid somehow obtained photographs of Layla and Karim together at a private beach, running a sensationalized story about the American widow who captured the heart of Al Nasira's most eligible sheikh. The article included thinly veiled insinuations about fortune hunting and cultural manipulation. Layla was horrified when she saw the article, forwarded by a well-meaning colleague. "This will damage your reputation," she told Karim when he came to her apartment that evening, his face grave. "Your business relationships, your standing in the community, my reputation can withstand gossip." He interrupted firmly. "I'm more concerned about how this affects you, the intrusion on your privacy, the mischaracterization of your character." "I've dealt with worse," she said, though the public exposure felt viscerally uncomfortable. As a photographer, she was accustomed to being behind the lens, not its subject. "Nevertheless, we should discuss how to respond," Karim said. "My public relations team suggests a formal statement clarifying our relationship." "Clarifying what exactly?" Layla asked, suddenly aware that they had never precisely defined what existed between them. Karim hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "That would depend on what you want our relationship to be. Moving forward." The moment stretched between them, laden with possibility. Before Layla could respond, Karim's phone rang. An emergency with one of their Middle Eastern shipping operations that required his immediate attention. "We'll continue this conversation tomorrow," he promised, as he prepared to leave. "Perhaps dinner at Safran, 8 o'clock. "I'll be there," she agreed, kissing him briefly before he departed. The weight of their unfinished discussion lingering in his wake. But the following day brought a different crisis. Early morning news reported that Samira had been involved in a serious car accident while driving with friends outside the city. She was in stable condition, but required surgery for a complex fracture. Layla learned of the accident not from Karim, but from a news alert on her phone. When she called him, his assistant answered, explaining that he was at the hospital and unreachable. Understanding his need to focus entirely on his daughter, Layla sent a simple text, expressing her support and letting him know she was available if he needed anything. 3 days passed with minimal communication, brief text updates from Karim about Samira's condition but nothing more. Layla respected his need to be fully present for his daughter. But as the silence extended, insecurity began to creep in. Perhaps the tabloid story and the subsequent family crisis had made him reconsider their relationship. Perhaps his family had convinced him during this vulnerable time that she was a complication he didn't need. On the 4th day, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Layla went to the hospital. She brought no flowers or gifts, nothing that would suggest she was overstepping her role, whatever that role might be. She simply needed to see him, to remind herself that the connection they had built was real. She found him in the hospital cafe, looking exhausted, as he stared into a cup of untouched coffee. When he noticed her, his expression transformed. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper passing across his features. "Layla," he said, rising to meet her. "I was just thinking about calling you." "How is she?" Layla asked, focusing on what mattered most. "Better today. The surgery went well. She's young and strong. The doctors expect a full recovery." He gestured for her to sit opposite him. "I'm sorry for the silence. These past days have been challenging." "You don't need to apologize," she assured him. "Your daughter needs you. I understand that." "Still," he said, reaching for her hand across the table, "I should have made time to call properly, not just those impersonal texts, especially after everything that happened with the tabloid story." "It doesn't matter," Layla said, meaning it. In the face of Samira's accident, such concerns seemed trivial. "It matters to me," Karim insisted. "These past days, sitting beside Samira's bed, watching her sleep, I've had a great deal of time to think about priorities, about time, about regrets." Something in his tone made Layla's heart quicken. "Karim, please let me finish," he said gently. When Samira's car went off the road, for those terrible hours before I knew she would recover, I faced the possibility of losing her. And in that dark place, many things became clear. He tightened his grip on her hand. Including how utterly essential you have become to my life. Layla swallowed against the emotion rising in her throat. We've spent months carefully navigating around what exists between us. Kareem continued. Creating practical solutions to logistical problems. And those solutions matter. They're necessary, but they're meaningless without first acknowledging the central truth. Which is? Layla asked, barely above a whisper. That I love you, he said simply. That you are the partner I never expected to find at this stage of my life. That whatever complications come with loving you, cultural differences, public opinion, geographical challenges, they are insignificant compared to the alternative of not having you in my life. Tears threatened at the edges of Layla's vision. I love you too, she admitted, the words both terrifying and liberating. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to fully believe it. After David, I thought that part of my life was over. And now, I know better, she said, with growing certainty. Life doesn't end with loss. It changes, evolves, creates new possibilities. A soft knock interrupted them, and they looked up to find Fatima standing in the doorway, elegant even in her obvious exhaustion. Samira is asking for both of you, she said without preamble, her eyes moving between them with knowing assessment. She refuses to take her medication until she sees you. Together, in Samira's hospital room, they found her propped against pillows, her legs suspended in a complex arrangement of metal and bandages. Despite her ordeal, her eyes brightened when she saw them enter hand in hand. Finally, she said, with teenage exasperation, I was beginning to think my near-death experience wasn't enough drama to bring you two to your senses. You were not near-death, Kareem corrected sternly, though his relief was evident in the gentle way he adjusted her pillows. And you should have taken your medication regardless. It's called leverage, father, Samira replied with a weak grin, before turning her attention to Layla. I'm glad you came. I've been telling him for days to call you properly. I'm here now, Layla said, touched by the girl's concern, even in her injured state. How are you feeling? Like I was in a car accident, Samira deadpanned. But the doctors say I'll make a full recovery, just in time for university in the fall. About that, Kareem began, but his daughter cut him off. If you're about to suggest delaying university because of this, save your breath. I will be fully healed in 3 months, and I am not missing my first term at LSE. She fixed her father with a determined look that reminded Layla strikingly of Fatima. We'll discuss it later, Kareem conceded, clearly choosing his battles. For now, take your medication and rest. As Samira reluctantly accepted the pain medication from a nurse, Fatima drew Layla aside. You will stay in Al-Nasira, the older woman said. It was not a question. We're still working through the details, Layla replied carefully. Details, Fatima scoffed. Love first, details later. The rest arranges itself. Looking at the formidable woman whose approval meant so much to Kareem, Layla made a decision. I would like your blessing, she said quietly. Not because we need it, but because your opinion matters to your son. And to me, she added honestly. Fatima studied her for a long moment, her expression inscrutable. Then, to Layla's surprise, she took both her hands and kissed her on each cheek. You already have it, she said simply. You make him happy. Everything else is noise. Late summer brought healing and decisions. Samira's recovery progressed steadily, and she was indeed ready for university when fall arrived. Karim began the process of restructuring his business responsibilities, maintaining strategic oversight while delegating daily operations to trusted executives and family members. For Layla, the path forward became increasingly clear. Her Al Nazira project had garnered significant attention in international photography circles, leading to a commission from a prestigious art foundation to document architectural preservation efforts throughout the Middle East. It would mean basing myself here permanently, she told Karim as they discussed the opportunity over dinner at her apartment. With extensive travel in the region, but always returning to Al Nasira, you'd be comfortable with that arrangement? He asked, clearly trying not to influence her decision. Leaving Boston behind. Boston will always be part of me, Layla acknowledged, but it's also filled with memories of a life that's complete now. David and I had our time together, and it was precious. But this, what we're building, deserves its own space. Karim nodded, understanding the nuance of her feelings. And professionally, this new project fulfills your creative vision. More than fulfills it, she said, with genuine excitement. It's exactly the kind of work I've always wanted to do, documenting cultural heritage, while exploring how communities evolve. The foundation is offering complete creative control and a 5-year commitment. Then I support you completely, Karim said, warmly. Though I admit I'm not entirely objective in wanting you to accept a position that keeps you here. Your lack of objectivity is noted, Layla teased, reaching across the table to take his hand. And appreciated. The following weekend, they took Samira to the airport for her flight to London. The girl was vibrant with excitement, though she walked with a slight limp that would fade with time and physical therapy. Promise you'll both come for Parents' Weekend in October, she insisted as they stood at the security checkpoint. And not just father, both of you. Her eyes fixed meaningfully on Layla. If you want me there, I'll be there, Layla promised, touched by the inclusion. After a tearful farewell, more tearful on Karim's part than he would later admit, they drove in companionable silence back toward the city. But instead of heading to either of their homes, Karim took an unexpected turn toward the coastal road. Where are we going? Layla asked, curious rather than concerned. You'll see, was his only response, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The familiar coastal road eventually led them to the same outlook point where he had first taken her to watch the sunset. Now nearly a year ago, the bench still stood facing the horizon, though the view today was of midday brilliance rather than sunset hues. Feeling nostalgic, Layla asked as they sat together, the sea breeze gentle against their faces. Reflective, Karim corrected, I brought you here when our future was uncertain. It seems fitting to return now that we stand on more solid ground. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. Layla Montgomery, this past year has transformed my life in ways I never imagined possible. You've brought perspective, challenge, and joy back into my world. Layla felt her breath catch as she recognized the gravity of the moment. Karim, I had planned an elaborate speech, he continued, with a self-deprecating smile. Something poetic about desert roses, blooming against odds and second chances at happiness. But in the end, what matters is simply this. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to face whatever comes next with you beside me. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box, opening it to reveal a ring of stunning elegance. A central diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires, the exact color of Layla's eyes. Will you marry me, Layla? Not as a sheikh's wife with all the social obligations that entails, but as my partner in a life we designed together? Tears blurred her vision as She looked from the ring to the man holding it. This man who had patiently given her time to heal, to trust, to believe in new beginnings. Yes, she said, her voice strong despite her tears. Yes to all of it, to partnership, to designing our life together, to loving you without reservation. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Layla felt the last shadow of grief lift from her heart. David would always be part of her story, just as Kareem's past with Nadia had shaped him. But the future, their future, was a new chapter waiting to be written. There will be challenges, Kareem acknowledged as he drew her close. Cultural adjustments, public scrutiny, the balance of our separate careers. I'm not afraid of challenges, Layla said, resting her head against his shoulder as they gazed out at the endless horizon. Not anymore. Not with you. Their wedding, held 6 months later, reflected the fusion of their lives and cultures. A small civil ceremony in Boston allowed Layla's family to participate, followed by a larger traditional celebration in Al Nasira. Samira served as her bridesmaid, while Fatima oversaw the festivities with imperious satisfaction. In keeping with their vision of partnership, they maintained separate professional identities. Layla's architectural preservation project flourished, earning international recognition. Kareem's restructured business responsibilities allowed him to focus on philanthropic initiatives. While supporting her work throughout the region, they divided their time between Al Nasira and a small apartment in Boston, creating a rhythm that honored both their shared life and individual needs. It wasn't always seamless. Cultural misunderstandings arose. Public interest in their relationship periodically flared, and the logistics of their travel schedules sometimes proved challenging. But on quiet evenings, whether on the terrace of their Al Nasira home or in their Boston apartment overlooking the Charles River, they would often remind each other of the conversation that had defined their approach to love after loss. Life doesn't end with grief, Kareem would say, holding her close. It evolves, creates new possibilities. Layla would continue, completing their shared wisdom. For Layla Montgomery Al-Fayez, who had once believed her capacity for love, died with her first husband, and for Sheikh Kareem Al-Fayez, who had resigned himself to a life where duty superseded personal happiness, their unexpected love story had become proof that the heart's capacity for renewal was as resilient as the desert rose, blooming most brilliantly where least expected. In the photography, a studio they had built in their Al Nasira home, a framed image held the place of honor, the desert rose. Layla had been photographing the day they met, its delicate pink petals unfurling against the harsh backdrop of sand and stone. Beside it, Kareem had placed a simple inscription in both Arabic and English. For what blooms in the desert knows the true value of love.